Canes fans might think a little bit differently about Miami's recruiting class today than they did about 10 days ago or so. We got Brad Tejeda here from Canes Insight to break things down for us and talk about these recent commits that everyone's excited about and to look forward to the future. Brad, what's going on today?
Nothing much, Mark. Thank you for having me, man. I can't complain. The last month and a half has been quite a crazy ride for Hurricane fans following recruiting. Between June 1st and now here in the middle of July, things are starting to heat up for Miami Hurricanes football recruiting. So we should see where it ends in this month.
It would be a surprise to a lot of people that the wide receiver positions in the condition that it is, considering the wealth of talent, obviously, in Miami's backyard, but this isn't going to help for 2023. That's a different topic, in trying to give Tyler Van Dyke some more support than what he experienced last year. But JoJo Trader was obviously a huge, enormous get as one of the top wide receivers in the country coming out of Hollywood. So were you a bit surprised at all? And how did that one come together?
This was a recruiting predicament where, in my opinion, anyone that follows recruiting, especially last year's recruiting cycle, I would probably compare this JoJo Trader recruitment similar to Ruben Bain last year. Miami just did a very good job at kind of just recruiting this young man from a very young age, dating all the way back to the Miami Gardens Ravens days, where he played under Coach Rod Mack, who obviously played at Miami at one point. His son Ryan Mack, who's also committed to the Miami Hurricanes, recently committed from St. Thomas Aquinas, along with a few other guys like Chance Robinson, wide receiver committed with Miami Hurricanes, that plays over at St. Thomas Aquinas. And there are other guys that are heavily involved in the recruitment of the Miami Hurricanes and also other big-time programs that played with these young men. So the camaraderie, the relationships that all these guys have with one another, specifically with JoJo Trader and some of these other guys, definitely played a big part in all this. But just the overall recruitment that Mario Cristobal, Kevin Beard, and the rest of the staff really did, just from beginning to end with JoJo Trader. I think the only thing that was really caught off guard, in my opinion, to some, was just the timing of the decision. This probably could have been a recruitment that you might have had to wait until football was played on the football field to kind of see where JoJo Trader would end up. But ultimately, it was between Miami and Florida State, all said and done. And he thought, this was a great opportunity to shut things down. And this was one of the best players in the nation, third-ranked athlete across the board. And if you talk to some, he's actually probably the best overall player in South Florida. That's over a guy like Jeremiah Smith, who Miami's going after as well, who's currently committed to Ohio State, and a few other guys. But this is a young man that could play both ways. He's similar to like a Travis Hunter type, but he's committed to playing wide receiver, and he could do it all. This is one of the best playmakers in South Florida and across the nation, and a big-time get from Miami.
Marquis Lightfoot, though, Brad, is a guy that, considering, Miami doesn't necessarily go to places like Chicago on a regular basis and pluck out top 10 edge rushers. And of course, the usual schools were in the mix for Marquis Lightfoot and Mario Cristobal. The rest of the coaching staff, you can give us better details, obviously made a huge impression to pull him out of Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, not only Mario Cristobal, but I mean, just having a guy like Jason Taylor on your staff really played a big time role in someone like Marquis Lightfoot. Mario Cristobal was trying to go 2 for 2 out there in Chicago with landing him and Justin Scott. But unfortunately, a few days before he landed Marquis Lightfoot, Justin Scott ended up going to Ohio State ultimately. And Marquis Lightfoot, he definitely expressed that teams like Ohio State, teams like Michigan, teams more in his area, definitely wanted him to stay there. And it really played a role that his first time ever getting on an airplane to travel anywhere from Chicago was to the University of Miami. That was for his first unofficial visit. So this wasn't even, after he went on all these other unofficials and official visits to obviously Miami, Ohio State, and others, of course. But the first time he ever went on an unofficial visit to a program dating back, I think, a year and a half ago, was to Miami. First time ever getting on a plane. And it's an experience he'll never forget, because the way that the staff made him and his family feel at the time He just really felt like at home. And, just to put it kind of in his own words, he pretty much said, after that moment, I compared every visit I went to the University of Miami that day moving forward, and that really played a big role in his recruitment, along with a player on our team in Miles Young, who doesn't necessarily get the most spotlight on the football field, but grew up in the same area where Marquis Lightfoot is from. So he really played a big role at just really making him feel at home as far as the locker room feel, culture, environment. And he's an aggressive style, player that feels like he could be molded into the next Jason Taylor. So it really helped that Jason Taylor would be coaching him.
Folks, if you enjoyed the conversation, please hit the like button, subscribe, get on over to Kane's Insight. Check out Brad's work on a daily basis. Definitely. Artavius Jones, of course, he's the most recent.
This is a young man that, if most people, when you turn on the tape of Artavius Jones, like he really just pops off the film. He's got the aggressive playing style that you like to see as an interior defensive lineman. Very quick feet, very strong hands. He gets off the line very quickly, very aggressive, and a lot of his traits that you see on the football field, a lot of that actually has to play into what his number one passion was, and that's basketball. This was a young man that was very, ultimately dead set on playing basketball in his career. And he just, started playing football a year and a half ago. And he just started playing, the position of the defensive line just last season. So this is a young man that is still very raw into playing football, but he has the skill set already and the size and the measurables that Miami likes to see, where, especially someone raw like him, they could kind of like mold him, to who they want him to be on that front. I like where we stand, with the potential of what we can make someone like him in the ultimate future. Because Artavius Jones has that aggressive playing style that you're going to want on that interior, similar to some of the guys we had in recent years.
Top 20 defensive lineman coming out of Bluntstown. There we go,
Yep.
Florida. I'm going to look that up on a map. I just had never heard of that town before. We got Brad here. We've heard of Brad. Hopefully you have. If you haven't, Kane's Insight, get on over there. Check out Brad's work. It's incredible the number of connections he has to recruiting ties across Florida and elsewhere that are related to Miami's cause and their pursuits. He's always coming up with interviews and insights to what's going on. He's got definitely the ear to the ground talking Miami football. So in regards to what's coming up here in the next few weekends, official visits, who's out there that seems to be close, where are the leans, where are the concerns? What's your latest take on where we stand right this second?
Before we kind of go into right now, right, you gotta kind of have to hit the rewind button a little bit, right? Because I think as a Miami Hurricane fans and just college fans in general, I think a lot of people were pushing the panic button in the last month, especially in June, because you had, your rivals in Florida and Florida State that really been pushing a lot of momentum on the recruiting trail, specifically a team like Florida, ranked number 3 in the nation right now, doing a very good job. But unless you don't follow Miami's recruiting board very closely, a lot of the guys that are committing to other programs, are not guys that Miami are specifically high on their board or going after specifically. So most of the guys that are still in play or still out there have not made a decision, are the guys that Miami are actually going after. So most of your probability and options are still out there. And just going back from last year, right? You most of your big time gets in the recruiting cycle last year were in fact, late June or all in the month of July, which we're currently in, right? So you had guys like Riley Williams the first day of the month of July last year. You had Francis Maigoa, Jaden Wayne, Malik Bryant, Tommy Kinsler, Ray Joseph, and Robert Stafford. All those guys were pretty much in a 30-day span between June and July. And now when you fast forward to now currently, you're kind of sitting in the same boat. You had Ryan Mack at the end of June, and then like the guys we just mentioned, Marquis Lightfoot, JoJo Trader, Artavius Jones, and even Derek Plaz as well, the offensive lineman from Jacksonville, who we landed on the 7th of July. You're already shaping up to have a similar situation of what you're building out from last cycle to this cycle which is really going to show why the jump of what you're seeing right now. Just to put it in a realization form of recruiting terms, Mark, just in the last 18 days, if you go from June 28th to today's date that we're talking about, Miami was ranked the 29th team in recruiting just 18 days ago. Now we are currently the 16th, or I'm sorry, the 14th overall team in the nation. So you jumped 15 spots in a matter of 18 days. You currently are sitting at 18 commits with a total average of 89.4 per commit, which is really good right now. And most of your guys that you're going after from this day moving forward are going to be those blue chip ratio guys. And the guys I'm talking about are your Kamarian Franklins of the world, the Zaquan Pattersons, Asandre Afua, offensive lineman from Seattle, Washington, one of the, priority targets that Miami's still going after as far as the offensive line, along with Eddie Pierre-Louis. Those are pretty much the two offensive linemen left that Miami's probably going to be targeting. And then you have a local guy in Luane McCoy from Miami Central, who is currently committed to Florida State, but I would expect to him flip to Miami at some point this recruiting cycle. So you have a lot of big names. You also got T.A. Cunningham that's going to be announcing on the 22nd, who transferred from California to Miami Central. So that's another name to look out for.
Brad, Tejada Kane's insight, breaking things down for us. I'm going to ask you the impossible question, but everyone has their own opinion on how important the season is. So between now and obviously National Signing Day, there's a season to be played. And it's impossible to gauge. Everybody's different. Miami could go fill in the blank of bad season, whatever that is. I don't want to throw that out into the atmosphere, whatever record that is. And some of these guys they're staying. They're committed. They want to be a Cane regardless. Other ones who are still going to be in that process of deciding, obviously, they're looking at a program in Miami, and you're talking about a lot of big fish out there that are looking at fill in the blank: Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, etc. Those are the first three that typically roll off the tongue, that there's not much thought as to, where is this thing going, as opposed to, okay, Miami coming off 5-7, where is it headed? So in light of that, how important are the wins and losses this fall?
I'll say this, similar to last cycle, Mario Cristobal does a very good job at going forward before the football season starts. Most of his guys that are committed in the class, that are prioritized, when you talk to them personally, when you see the mentality that they bring, they're really bought into the program. And it doesn't really matter what happens in the football season if those guys are going to go elsewhere. I think what's going to play a big part in this football season isn't going to be necessarily guys currently committed to the class. It's going to be the guys that we're still going after. So a guy like Jeremiah Smith, a guy like Ryan Wingo, a guy like Ellis Robinson, for example. These are going to be the guys that are going to kind of teeter-tot one way or another. If you want to land guys like that, you've got to have at least, bare minimum 8-win season, 9-win season. Just being realistic. I don't think a 7-win season you're going to be able to get some of these other guys you're going after.
Brad, thank you so much for stopping by, getting us updated, and giving your take on fall camp. Good stuff, man.
Yeah, no problem, man. I thank you for having me, man. We'll be doing this more now that football season's coming up.